We're back with the next wave brought to you by Bet365. Steven, I need to apologize right off the jump. We did you incredibly dirty giving you the shortest stool in this setup.
Yeah. No
you are taller. And the first time I met you, I was like, you are a lot taller than I thought you would be. So again, sorry. It's a tough look on our part.
I'm still too small to be an NHL goaltender, though.
Fair. All right, let's dig into some draft talk. It is the reason we are all down here in Las Vegas, and we're a couple of days away. But as you sit there and you look over your mock draft and you think about the way the night's going to play out, I'm going to ask you a very simple question. What pick are you most excited for?
I'm thinking number 4, because that's when historically that's been kind of a time where everything starts to fall apart, where everything gets wild. This year with so many high-end defensemen, how many are we going to see early? I think there's less of a belief maybe that we're going to see as many defensemen in the top 10 as maybe, if you got asked this 2 months ago. But I think the Columbus Blue Jackets kind of hold the most interesting pick here again this year.
Look, I agree with you. I think we could see some fireworks even before that, Steven. But when you think about, I want you to put on your scouting hat for a second and not your mock draft or trying to predict. If you had your draft board, like just run me through what your top 5 picks would be.
So it'd be Celebrini, number 1, obviously. Ivan Demidov, number 2. I just think the world of him. I think Artem Levshunov, number 3. So that's number 3. Number 4, I'm going Zane Parekh. I love that really big potential there. And then Berkeley Catton. I'm as high on him as probably anyone in this draft.
So if you think through that and you like, so Demidov, I think, is going to be maybe the most polarizing player in this draft. When you say Demidov and you do it without hesitation, like you just did, a lot of people say, what's he like compared to Matvei Michkov? What kind of impact could we expect? And is this guy, is he the next Kucherov? Like, what is he?
The couple names have been kind of mentioned to me by scouts, being Kucherov and Kaprizov, the way he's able to just dominate the puck there. He's a little bit bigger than I think a lot of teams were expecting. And we did kind of see that throughout the year where he started to be a bit more physical. It wasn't this guy who was being so small. And I think people were worried about that. I think with Demidov, you're getting the most skilled player in this draft, the player with the most upside. And I fully expect him to be the highest scoring player in this draft. Celebrini obviously puts up a ton of points, but he's more of like a Sidney Crosby style player where he will find other ways to be effective.
Yeah.
Demidov, it's all offense, but he's the best at it.
It's funny that you said Sidney Crosby because I felt so guilty sending out the clip. I had Jay Pandolfo, the Boston University coach who had Celebrini this year. And I said, well, who do you see? And he's like, Sidney Crosby. I'm like, I can't send that out. Like, you can't compare anyone to Sidney Crosby, but there are elements to his game, the physicality, all those different attributes that he brings, the complete nature of it that you're like, oh, I could see what you mean. Not the same ceiling, but certainly some of those attributes.
He's going to put up a ton of points. He's really physical player. Like that's the thing you look at. Bedard,
he wants the physicality.
Yeah, he wants to be a big part of that, and it helps that he's got some family members that are all about the fitness and everything. And you look out there, and he's just
me all about.
Yeah, well, you're not his dad, but he's the real deal. He's in every style. He's good at pretty much everything out there.
You wrote about Henry Muse. You're doing kind of, again, continuing to do an article a day about different prospects that you find interesting. What makes Henry Muse so fascinating?
So this is a guy that played forward in minor hockey. He was a winger, and he moved to defense right before the OHL draft. And this is a guy that every time I watched him, he made the teams he played for better. Whether it be the team in Ottawa, the Ottawa 67s, eventually the Toronto Junior Canadiens, when he was on the ice, the team was so much better. But the issue is, for as good as his offensive instincts are, he's got a great shot. He knows how to rush the puck. His defensive game could be an issue. I do think he has taken steps forward, and I dropped him pretty low on my board, and I've moved him up a bit just because watching him near the end of the season looks like a guy who was starting to commit more defensively. But when you are a defenseman, you do need to be able to play defense. And that's something he does lack against some of the other guys, kind of like Cole Hudson in a way. But I think the upside there is for someone who could put up 45, 50 points a year, maybe be your power play number 2. He's exciting.
I was going to say, I know that everyone views all these players through different lenses, right? And that's the beauty of the draft. Teams are debating things right now, just talking to some teams that would probably blow everyone's mind in terms of what their actual board and list looks like. There's been some disparity. I know you're a big fan, but Tij Iginla, you have him a little bit lower than most people do. I've seen him as high as number 4. Where do you think he goes, and why do you think there's such a gap in the thought process? How much of it is name recognition, bloodlines versus true impact. And you're also trying to project what's this guy going to be at 24, not at 18.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like I had him on my mock draft, I believe, going number 4 to Columbus, and I think he will go higher than I projected. My concern is I just don't know what type of role he's going to have in the NHL. He says he wants to be a center. I thought he played better as a winger. He's a guy that at the U18s, we saw someone when he wasn't scoring was a really, really good high energy player. It's kind of like, I don't know if he's like, he put up 47 goals this year. I don't think he's going to be a high end goal scorer in the NHL. I think what makes him valuable is everything else, whether it be the way he commits defensively, wants to run people through the wall, things like that. But I'm not sure, like if I take him over Berkeley Catton, I think Berkeley Catton's going to give you another 20 more points in a season. So that's kind of why I look at him a bit higher, but it's really close, like 4th to like 10th. Like it could be a coin flip. Any of those guys can go in any order and it would make sense.
Which is why you see so many teams sort of advertising to this point. Columbus, Ottawa, like there's a bunch of teams in the top 10 that are like, well, let's see how the board shapes up. And then I might be willing to move my pick because I have my sights set on one guy. You have your sights set on one guy. How can we both make each other happy?
Yeah, it's going to be pretty interesting, like maybe more interesting than recent years.
Fair enough. I know I'm going to throw you this as a bit of an audible, but do you want to stick around for the rest of the show? Because we got some Ask DFOs that kind of pertain to you, Steven.
Let's do it.
Yeah,
all right, there you go. That's a wrap on the next wave. Let's dig into our Ask DFO question. Like Ask DFO question is brought to you by Douglas Mattress. You can sleep as good as I do when I'm back home on my Douglas by heading to douglas.ca/DFO today. Take advantage of the free mattress and bedding bundle. All right, Steven, one that we got in that pertains to you. We've talked about this before, but again, if it's being asked, I'll throw it your way. Who's someone that you view as the potential to be the steal of the draft?
So I'm going Aaron Kiviariu. And it's funny because this is someone that we were talking about as, a potential top 5 pick heading into the season. A guy who had played a lot of pro hockey already, was dominant at every international tournament he played against. We heard about him for the first time, I want to say on like HF boards when he was 10 or 11, because he was playing such a high.
Stephen Ellis, HF boards guy.
I that's how you find all the really strange players. But
I was an HF boards guy back in 22 years ago, a long time ago.
That's good. But yeah, I think with him, he missed most of the season with an injury, and a guy that skated as well as he did, having to come back from a knee injury was very difficult. But I do think that he's a guy that could easily put up 55, 60 points in the NHL in the right situation.
We got one here, Frank. I'll throw it your way first. Hawks fan wants to know, they have 2 firsts and 2 seconds. Will they move any of those picks to try get maybe some more ready NHL pieces?
I believe no. I could see them moving up from 18, depending on how the board falls, but no, they're not. I don't think they plan on moving any of those pieces to try and get better. I think they're pretty set on what their plan and timeline is.
You look, obviously, Connor Bedard headlines that, not prospect pool because he's already in the NHL, but headlines that group of young players with the talent in Chicago that's not quite at the NHL yet. Where do you kind of have them ranked? Are they top 5, top 10?
They're a top 5 prospect pool. I think, Frankie Nazar is going to be a big part.
Yeah.
They've got 2 really good goaltenders, Adam Gajan being one of them, Drew Kamessel being the other. So that's one of the teams that might not have a ton of superstar power, but it's got depth at every position, and very few teams can do that.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Saravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe button.